for the past few years, everything slowed down in Miami. You know, the sales have slowed down, but yet the production has actually increased. And there is a lot of, there is around maybe 20,000 units in the market today, and there is another 20,000 of upscale, mid to upscale units are coming to the market in the next few years. And that, you know, giving with a slow rate of sales and even rental kind of stabilizing for the past year. So the boom of 3-4 years ago has kind of flattened. And that, you know, all that kind of gives you perspective on, okay, where we headed. So the Miami market today is a lot of inventory, not a lot of sales. Rental is kind of flattened, so everybody's kind of, you know, being cautious, and especially owners need to be cautious on what to buy and where to buy, because in a lot of different instincts that if you buy it somewhere, you might be actually losing money. You know, one thing that we should kind of, to sum up everything we need to talk about, I think today is better for you to rent than to own in Miami. And we can go by identifying why. But, you know, in my opinion, renting today, same unit, is 50% cheaper than you buying it. And we can illustrate that a little further. You see, yeah, you know, who owns the condo market today in Miami? Who is the buyers in the condo from Miami? I mean, yes, there is a lot of executives came from north who their companies moved here, and they are purchasing some. Lot of, you know, some people from California came here and purchased some. But one thing that not a people kind of see or know is that for the past 4 or 5 years, 50% of the sales in Miami, they happen to international owners. They all went to people from Latin America, from the Middle East, overseas, or even China and India. They sold a lot of property to a lot of international people, and all of them, they don't even live in the United States, you know. And 30-40% of these properties, they're somewhat vacant. So a lot of these new high-rise or even the 2-3 years, they say sitting there vacant because these buyers, they didn't buy them necessarily to cash flow or to, they just bought them to park their money in them. They just wanted to take the money out of their own country and put it somewhere stable and, you know, somewhere with an upside, which Miami have seen a major upside in the past 10 to 15 years, especially in the past 5 years. Well, you know, before a few years back, you know, they used to do, you know, high rise. Now you are paying for the amenities, you're paying for the height, you're paying for the views, you're paying for all that. And this is, at the time, I called that up the air premium. It's like the higher your unit is, the better view. So that's what you're paying. It's almost like you're paying not for only your brick and mortar, you're paying where it's positioned, you know. Does it have a view? Does it have a nice view? Is it in the back? Is it in the end? And this is where the extra money went. Now, to tap all that off, we got a new thing that came up a couple years ago in Miami is when they start taking brick and mortar, okay, and they start branding it. So what does that mean? You know, it's almost like they took a luxury brand item, you know, like, okay, let's take Dolce & Gabbana, for instance, right? Now, Dolce & Gabbana is designing one of the biggest, fanciest, luxurious towers actually in the world, and they're spending $500 to $600 million to build it. Now, and people, they're going to be paid 3, 4, 5 times the cost of the brick and mortar of that, okay, just because the name Dolce & Gabbana is in it. Okay, so now, so that's where we're talking about that the condo market in Miami went on its own. So it's not only you buying now for amenities, high rise, you know, and all. Now also you're buying for the brand. So you can buy Dolce & Gabbana jeans for $800, $700, $900, but the actual value is barely $50. So it's happening in real estate also, and people are buying it. And people are buying it because they want that prestige. They want that recognition. Okay, I own a condo in the Dolce & Gabbana building, or that by itself gives you a status. So it's not only I'm wearing Dolce & Gabbana jacket, or I'm driving an Aston Martin, or I'm driving a Bentley, because now Aston Martin did a complex, Bentley is doing one, you know, and Mercedes is doing one. So it's not only I'm driving the car, it's not only my luxury buying is 100,000 or 1,000 jeans or 100,000 car, you know. Now I'm paying 10 million, 15 millions, 20 millions to live in that brand, to live in that names. And to me, as a you know, number guy, as an underwriter, if you want to call it, that, you know, economically, that doesn't make sense. You know, that doesn't really cash flow. I understand you buy, you know, jeans for $1,000, but now you're talking 20 million. You're talking wealth. Now you're talking allocating wealth into a unit that is not getting that money back, you know, from that wealth. And I find to be this something that is unprecedented before. Like, how can we really take that data and kind of assume what's going to happen 2-3 years from now, us number guys? You see, Miami has kind of broken all the rules. And whoever tells you that they know what they're doing in the Miami market in terms of developer, you know, you don't know. You don't know, because when you look at the numbers, they don't make sense. And numbers don't lie. Okay, yes, I love Dolce & Gabbana. It's a beautiful designer. It's a jacket I wear, pants I wear, but not a condo I own that doesn't cash flow, actually. You know, so that's where we're at with that. And what's the ramification of that? I really cannot point it out, but I can tell you it's not economically positive. As money people, as money, you know, whoever has, if you have money, you need to make money on that money. If you don't make money on that money, inflation can really eat up that money, okay, by virtue. So savings, in my opinion, you lose money by saving if inflation works against you. So now, and us from real estate, you always look at cash flow. You know, like you buy a property, you know, us as investors, developers, that's what, you know, gets you to do a project is you buy the property, you fix it up a little bit, or you build it, or you create it, and then the economics factors allow you to make profit to sustain it and keep moving. That doesn't exist anymore. You know, I'll give you an example. Okay, so let's assume you own $1 million condo today in the Miami area. Let's take Brickell for one reason. For you know, it has all the amenities. Okay, you bought it 3-4 years back. It's $1 million. You know, so you have a high rise, you have condos, you have everything that needs 90% of all the amenities you have there. So you got a good property, and the value was good. This is before the boom even. Okay, so now let's do the numbers on that. Okay, so you got $1 million value. Okay, now so let's go and see the expenses of that unit. The taxes in that unit, you know, could vary today from $1,500 to $1,800. The condo fees in that unit, you know, could actually range you between $1,500 to $2,500. Let's take $2,000. So now we got what? And this is the smallest range. So we get 15, you know, on the taxes, $2,000. That's $3,500. And then you get another, you know, maintenance, fixing this, fixing that. So you're talking another $500, maybe $1,000. So you're talking $4,500 to $5,000, the cost of owning the unit only, without the cost of the money. Okay, so now you own that unit. Let's assume you paid cash. Okay, so you need to come up with $4,500 to $5,000 and a good day. I'm not talking any assessment. I'm not talking anything crazy. No, if you paid the bills as they go, and assuming there is no, you are paying $4,500 to $5,000 a month. Okay, so now, you know, for us as a financial peak, you know, guys. So we look at what's the money yielding you now today. $1 million. If you want to borrow it from the bank, it's going to cost you around $5,500 to $6,000 a month. So in reality, that's how at least $1 million should make you if you own $1 million. So, but yet, that's $6,000 that you're not making, and that's $5,000 that you're costing. So now this condo, in reality, if you want to take it from a cash flow analysis or an income statement analysis, you have $1 million in the bank. That $1 million is costing you $5,000 to keep. Okay, so imagine today you have $1 million here, and every month you are paying $5,000 to keep that $1 million with you. Where did that come from? Okay, I went to school. I have a master's. I have an MBA in finance. Like, I never really but and also you are not making any money from that million, and that million is subjected to assessment, is subjected to downfall in the economy, it's subjected to any risk that might have you. So, and you are losing the opportunity that you should make in that money, which at least should be 6,000, because that's what the bank charges. So now, you look at this all numbers and you're like, where are we going from here? Like, how would that make sense? People call me, say, Salim, I own this small story, okay? So the guy owned the unit. He had equity in it. This was a year and a half ago. And he's telling me he owned 3 units. 1 he lives in, 2 he rent. He was making a couple $1,000s a month before, but now with the new insurance increases and all that, now he's breaking even. And he's telling me, I'm breaking even. That's good. I'm like, no, it's not good. How much you owe the other one? Oh, he has $1 million plus on the other 2 as equity. I said, get out of that million, sell him, okay? Well, what am I going to do with my money? I don't know what to do. I told him what to do. He sold the units. He put the money where he told him to put it. I saw him a year later, like a year and a half later in the park. He hugged me and gave me a kiss. He goes, Salim, what you told me to do a year and a half ago tripled my money. I'm like, you know what? I don't want to know what you did, but no, I want to tell you what you did. I'm like, I don't need to tell you, and that's what happens, because he was sitting there making zero money on his money. Actually, it's costing him money. And that's where people need to be aware that, owning condominiums or owning properties in general doesn't mean that you are making money. You have to look at your money and what that money is making you. I have an old mentor of mine used to tell me, he's an older guy, but he was so keen on real estate. He owned banks back in Boston. He tells me, listen, don't you ever fall in love with properties, ever. Each property, it's a number. I don't care whatever it is. It could be up. It's always a number. And that number has to yield you a return. And that number, if that yield you a return, that property is worth shit. Okay? So, and that stuck with me at the time, So, and now that's where we're at. That's where we're at with the Miami condo market. So, and that's where some things don't cash flow. Okay? If your equity is not making you money, then it's losing money. So the question is, how did we get here? Okay? First, we identify the international owner, who comes in, who just not looking unnecessarily at cash flowing. He's not looking at he just wants to buy, he wants the prestige, he wants the sophistication, and he wants the image that goes with owning real estate in Miami. And then we talked about the branding. Now also what kind of empowered all that is that when you develop in a real estate development, and I had to kind of face these issues before, is that, you develop the first project, you make a profit. There is something called in the tax brackets, it's called 1031 exchange, which that if you buy a property and you sell it, the gain on that sales, you have to pay 33% of it back to the government. So a lot of developers, a lot of investors, what they do is when they make the first gain, instead of paying the taxes on it and move on, they buy more properties and they do more development, and they take that gain and dump it into the new development. Now, and these people usually, they come to the market through the end because, they have to make a few other developments for it to kind of bring some kind of substantial profit. And now, instead of paying 33% on it, they don't mind paying an extra 10, 15, 20% over the market price. And that's what created some of the booms sometimes, that the house goes on the market the day one, boom, people are paying more than the asking prices. And if you look at those, mostly they are 1031 exchange. And that's where pushed prices beyond what the market can afford, because you get all these flecks of money. Instead of paying 33%, I'll pay 10 extra and I'll keep it. And, and if it doesn't cash flow, as long as I break even, I'm okay, because nobody wants to pay the taxes. Nobody wants to give Uncle Sam anything. And ironically enough, the other day I was looking to where that law came from, and I find it to be that they did it the government kind of did it purposely, so it doesn't allow people to exit. Actually, it gives them a bone to stay in the game until there is some actually people who own properties today that is distressed and making them zero money, but yet they don't sell it because they don't want to pay the gain through the years on it today. So, and that's what create that whole illusion, that whole bubble, if you want to call it, and the prices in Miami. So you get the foreigners who buy, and the international buyer, they get the branding and the image and the prestige, and then you get the 1031 exchange, which created that these prices that they don't make sense. Economically, they make 0 sense. So, everybody says, oh, wow, what, the Miami markets are going to crash? Well, like, what's going to happen? You only talking about negative things. In the end, look, I'm stating the facts. I'm stating the numbers. I'm stating how things are, okay? But, the fact remains that, when numbers don't make sense, numbers don't make sense. So how many people they're going to keep paying these prices for these condominiums, And if the economy, globally or locally, dips 5 to 10%, what's going to happen? What's going to happen to this international buyer? Now he has to come up with $4,000 or $5,000 every month to pay the fees on his empty units when his country or his economy kind of took a little dip due to the war that happens with Iran or China or what have you, other geopolitics that might get involved. So is it going to collapse? I don't know. But is it headed to an uncertainties? Yes. And, and this is where everybody has to be cautious. Hey, if you're a multimillionaire, if you have 2, 3, 4, 500 million and you pay $20 million for an item that's going to put you in a different status among your peers, that's good for you. That's fine. That's not who I'm talking to. I'm talking to the people who are, who works for a living, like work, not have inherent, who is, they want to live the life, but yet they want to be economically cautious. And that's where we can come in. That's where I can come in and look at you and tell you how healthy your position is, regardless to what your bank account is. So that's where now I think Miami will always be one of the better ones to be in. But given everything we stated, that doesn't exist anywhere else too. So all that might affect. So, being cautious, being responsible is not going to hurt you. And that's what we're trying to kind of tell people, is it going to collapse? No, but it's going to stabilize? Maybe, and that's where you need to kind of look at your portfolio and see, okay, how can I prevent this from affecting me negatively? Okay, you want to live at Dolce & Gabbana? Right. Don't buy, rent. You want to live in one of these branded buildings? Sure. Don't go spend 10, 15 million. Go buy, a condo that costs maybe 5 million, 10 million. If you look at the rent vis-a-vis the cost of the money, it's much less. You can rent it for its fees. Okay, because that's what's happening in most buildings today. There is a building down the street here, without sounding names. The lady said to the realtor, just get me my fees and rent, I'm okay. Her fees are $3,900 a month. She leased it for $41,000. Forget about the return on my money. I just want to keep paying my fees. So if that happens, few other things happen, collectively, what's going to happen? Actually, it'll be interesting to find out, but it would not be, unless, well, I don't know what, unless inflation comes and everything multiplies. So now you bought and borrowed on old money, but also it's going to affect assessment. It's always going to affect, doesn't matter if you're getting 5x on your value on equity if the cup of coffee now is $30. So in the end, inflation is numbers. It's just zeros added here and there. So you have to look at the whole thing and what's going to happen in the long run, how things are going to unfold. So to answer your question, all what I have to say is just be careful. Just be careful. Doesn't matter how rich you are, just be careful, and look at everything. And again, numbers don't lie. If numbers tell you a direction you should take it. What's the difference? because you get a substitute to it, which is what? Rent. Which is funny. Among all this, me doing all this research and doing all this thinking, I came to realize, like, okay, what is a bulletproof estimate that you can create that determines value? Giving back to my old mentor's comment, and today what I realized after 30 years of doing real estate development is whatever the rent yield you, that's the value of your property. Meaning that, if I have a property that is yield me $5,000, take its expenses out, whatever that net value, that's the number. That's a number. So let's go back to the million, okay? The million, $5,000, okay? The expense of that property, okay? So in my opinion, that value should not be more $300,000 to $400,000. It should not be, because the number should determine the value. Okay, the rent, like, okay, you want to invest. The bank tells you, I'll give you $1 million, give me 6% return. Okay, so that's the cost of the $1 million. So if my $1 million doesn't bring me that, then what's the point? Like, what what am I doing? So I'd rather not do it. So now, and this is where you can see the bubble, where even taking that property, putting it on the market doesn't yield you its expense. That's a no-no. That's a no-no. That's a big no-no. And I don't understand why nobody else is blowing the whistle. Like, I don't understand that. Like, I don't get it. Because developers don't want to point it out because it's their money, because of previous development. Realtors don't want to point it out because they'll be out of business. Brokers don't want to point it out because they make money from financing. Bankers don't want to. Nobody wants to point out the obvious, where, hey, stop paying inflated price because you ruin it to everybody else. You're making it impossible for everybody to own homes because of your prestigious baloney. So that's where I think everybody should sit back a little bit, sit down, put everything in front of them, and look at the numbers and look where you're going and see how you can reconfigure that, reprice that, where it gives you a little bit longevity, because where we headed, to me, it's still why people keep doing it. One of the things that I encountered in the past 3 years, 30 years of, one of the things that I experienced and I encountered in the past 30 years, and this is why I kind of focused on problematic properties or distressed properties, I like the problem solving of things, because I found out that this is where you have the most upside. So, and I know sometimes, real estate is not about the property. In real estate, there is one thing that I would like to tell is that these old timers keep saying is that you make money in real estate when you buy, not when you sell. Now, when you say that, people are like, well, what are you talking about? Well, because you need to buy right. If you don't buy right, you're always going to lose money. Okay? It's not in the end where you're going to make the money. You're going to make the money in the beginning. So my suggestion to you, or my approach by doing all this, that if you are thinking to buy, or even you are thinking to sell, or even you are in a position where you don't know what your option is or where you're going to go from here, it will only take few seconds for us to look at what you have and tell you, free of advice, free of conclusions, is where you should do and where you should go from here. So, because sometimes making real estate deals, it's within the art of the deal. You need to know when to enter. You need to know where to get out. You need to know how you set things up. You need to know many things. And it doesn't matter where you're at. You could be owning something you're upside down in. You still can get out it positively. You want to buy something, but yet you cannot get the money. You can still do that. You want to sell something, but yet, you cannot sell it because of the buyers cannot get, you can also work around that. You see, what's happening with real estate today is most people are stuck in their old ways. You got a realtor, you got a broker who does the money, you got a banker, you got an attorney, and you need these four to make a good real estate deal. No, because you need another someone to look at the whole thing and make sure you're getting the best financing available. Somebody has to make sure that you're getting the best interest available. Somebody has to make sure that you are buying it in the best property. You are buying it in the best association. You are buying it, where everything else in the future is work for you, because what you're buying today is going to affect you later. So you have to buy things right in order for you to make money. So doesn't matter where you're at in the transition. It could be you own a piece of land, you don't know what to do with it, or you could be in the midst of developing and now you have all these overruns and restrictions and you don't know what to do. You could be in the midst of zoning, you don't know you could be anywhere in a phase, or you could be just an older gentleman who owns a condo and you don't know if you should get out or not, and retire peacefully. It could be any of those. And we can really, really tell you where to go from there. All what you have to do, just give us a blurb, send me an email, you can call me, we can have a 5-10 minute conversation, free of charge, and we can really help you out. And again, it's not as you might think it is. It's not if you want to sell your home, call a realtor. It's not if you need a loan, call a bank. It's not, if I have a problem, call my attorneys. When it comes to real estate, it's almost like a heart surgeon. Not every doctor can do a heart surgery, okay? But every doctor can prescribe medicine. So everything related to real estate today, give it to like a regular MD, but everything we do circular procedure to save your lifespan financially or with the units you own. Well, in reality, actually, condo associations, they are the one who runs the project. They are the one who makes all the decisions in regard to the project, what's going to be done, what's not to be done, who to hire, how even to run the project. So it kind of like, even if you own a condo in a condo association, the decision for the future of that complex or that property, it has nothing to do with you. There is the association, and by virtue, they're the one who decides everything. You just have to comply. And that's due to a lot of factors that we can discuss a little further down in the discussion. But in reality, the condo association is who control the whole, every owners, and the owners, they just get a bill every month and they have to pay it. They don't have much to say about it. Now it comes to an issue, okay, who is these associations? One of the, and I'm finding this through experience, through kind of, I developed my first association in 2001 when I created my first condominium conversion. I took an old mill and I converted it into condominiums, and I had to write up the condo association docs and all that. And even at that time, I was very complex by the idea. I even had an attorney to write it up, but I always found that there is issues that, they might come in the future. And, 25, 30 years later, I'm realizing, what, I was kind of right. But at the time, that was the norm. So the association, it's funny that, like now that you take any condo building in Miami, or anywhere else per se, the association runs it. Now, some of these properties, they're worth $200, $300, $400, $500 million. And, and most of them, you look at the association and who are they? They're just regular people. They're just regular people who have regular job, but yet they are the one who's running the association. So there could be a doctor, could be it could be an engineer if you're lucky, and it could be a teacher, it could be, even Uber driver. It could be anybody that they are the one who is nominated to be in the association, but they have regular job and they do this part-time or even sometimes voluntarily, and some of them have no knowledge of management or even running financial operation or even know anything about kind of building or property management. So that by itself now is becoming a problem, because you get these people running $200, $300, $400 million properties, values, equities, but yet they have no money kind of conception and how to move money around or how money, and that's part of the problem, I believe, and that's where I'm coming to the picture is that, oversight needs to be implemented on a yearly basis. It's like when you have an accounting audit or when you have a financial audit, you need to have a managerial audit. You need to have an audit that looks at these associations and look at their decision making. And are they making the right decision vis-a-vis finances, vis-a-vis owners, vis-a-vis equity? Not, but, if you come to think of it and you look at it, because for the past 5 years, I have encountered many associations and their problems, and I work to facilitate, fix some of them. I was baffled by the knowledge or the know-how that they know, and even they can tell you yes or no just because they feel like it, and yet they have no expertise when it comes to managing that high level of money. And I think moving forward, that should be looked at as good as the equity or the view or the amenities or anything. Who is running this condo association? And are they running it to the best interest of me, the owner? Because, one of my projects is, the association didn't care. They just take any bits they can get and they levy it on the owners, but yet, did you scrutinize the bill? Like, did you really go through the proper channel for you to kind of scrutinize that bid to see if this bid is best, bid for whatever we're doing, or you just took it because you're not even paying the assessment, And these properties, they have 100, 200, 300 owners, and everybody says, what is it? It's only X for that owner. But yet, when you add it all together, it's millions and millions of dollars, and the owners cannot say boo. So to me, that's a flaw in the system. And ironically enough, it's flaw. I kind of realized that 25 years ago when I created, my condo docs. And I was telling my attorneys, they're like, yeah, I'm like, really? They're going to run, at the time I had a project, 15 million. Really? These, 3 individual, whatever, they're going to run it? Who are, they could be anybody, And ironically, when I was working on a certain project, a couple of the association trustees didn't even live in the building. They didn't even live in the state. And I'm like, how are you sitting here making decisions that have to do with a building or a property that you don't even live in? Or even, so to me, these are no-nos. And one issue is, too, that condominiums docs, they're almost like copy and paste. They're all like genetic in a way, Well, this is the rule, you have this and that, and that's and I'm like, no, that shouldn't continue. This is not the Constitution we're talking about, But everybody treats it as such. And the condo docs, by organization, they give the association a lot of power, but yet they don't give owners any power at all. And you have to pay, and if you don't pay, they'll foreclose on you. And it becomes very disconnect between owners and association, and this is a major problem that I found it to be. And in order to move forward for more harmonious connection between owners and association, and when I say association, I'm talking assessments, because that's where the owners get affected the most. Couple members of the trustee, we should do this, no problem. They decide, then the owner's stuck with the bill. Well, that's not correct. That shouldn't be the case. And a lot of also, I'm realizing condos and their association, the lack of reserves. People, on a good day, we're doing good, everybody's good, the economy is going up, and then they don't realize that, hey, this is not going to last. You need also some kind of a reserve, so when assessment comes, when something happens, then you have some reserve money versus, hey, you need to pay me this within the next 6 months, and if you don't, I'm going to foreclose on you. I mean, that's unrealistic. And that's part of the issue where association and their governance, it needs to be changed. It needs to be altered. It needs to be modified. And most of all, owners should have some kind of say, okay, I threw the flag. I need oversight. I need someone to come in here and look at what you guys doing. Are you, how did you get here? So they need that, okay? And in my opinion, that's part of the issues that we are encountering today. Well, I mean, especially now, and especially in Miami, owning a condominium, especially on the waterfront, it becomes problematic. Given the Surfside accident that happened a while ago, and that kind of made everybody, make, first of all, the municipality, the city being, hey, we don't want that to happen. And also they start levying these restrictions on condominiums without realizing the effect of it. That's why they postponed it a couple times already, the deadline, because they're realizing this is unrealistic. And then you get an economy like Miami, where construction is booming. They're even getting people from out of state to build what they have. And now you're adding construction work on existing building, and the economy that the construction, it's thin, and people are paying 2-3 times the cost into an assessment. So, and that has been hit to the owner. So the whole thing now it's upside down. It's not like you're talking in an economy where construction workers, they are not working. They're willing to do things for cheap. No. Now you have to give an engineering report. We all know all structural engineers are busy up the who. So adding all that together is kind of hurting the mid-range condo owners, and now making it impossible for him to pay the assessment, because after you pay the assessment and, the condo, you went beyond its value. So even if you pay the assessment and you take what you paid for, now you're in the red. Not in the red versus cash flow like we demonstrated. No, now in the red in terms of value. So I find that's going to be problematic, and that's going to create a lot of exiting in a sense. Well, and this is, again, like we discussed before, where there's a disconnect between the association, its members, who's running it, and the owners, and when you talk to association people, or the trustees, as they call them, they're by virtue, they're kind of arrogant. They think they know what they want, or what they're talking about, and they just act like, they are the owner of everything, and they have no remorse. Like, they have no guilt against the owners, because to them, it's not their primary job. They're not getting paid on performance. They all have their own job, and they're doing this part-time or whatever it is. So, and that to me, it's kind of a, it's a disconnect. I mean, over $20 million, if anybody wants to manage 20 million and above, you need a college degree. You need it to be there full time. You need accountability. You need, in the end of the day, and you need transparency. You need, you need year to year. Hey, where are we going to be from 3? Yeah. So all that doesn't exist. And all that, it needs to happen in order for us not to have the same issues that we have in today. Well, due to personal experience, and this is real, I got a job a couple of years ago in a property where for no reason, you speak to everybody, it's everybody else's fault. The construction guy, it's the associate trustee's fault. The trustee, well, the owners didn't have the money for assessment. Well, okay, how much was the assessment? 150. I'm like, how do you expect a guy who owns $500,000 mortgage condo all of a sudden needs to come up with 150,000 within 3 months, 6 months, whatever, even a year, or even where do you get that? And you expect him to have it, and if he doesn't, he's going to lose his home. Like, where does that logic comes from? And again, like I mentioned earlier, it's in the condo docs. I'm like, even if the condo docs allow you to do that, that doesn't mean it should be done. You can go back and amend the condo docs. So all that, it doesn't lead to a happy marriage per se. And now, with all the extra things that they came, especially in the Miami area, to add to the assessment and to the condos and to the owner, the problem became so obvious you cannot dispute it. You know what? You cannot not see it. I used to speak with and I had 3 contracts with condo association to fix their financial issue. Every contract I submitted, I made it clear that I am not working for the association. I'm not working for the trustee. I am working for the owners. And none of them like that. Like, what do you mean? I'm like, what do I mean? Who's going to pay the bill in the end of the day? If you have this conglomerate condo complex, beautiful, top of the line, in the end, who's paying the bill? Not the trustee, not the name, not the construction, not the owner. So we all here working for that owner, and that owner who buys that condo should understand that and should demand all the power on how to move forward, not to give it to somebody who's not even intellectually adequate to run a condo association. And by virtue that, you know what, they should have known, because their job title did not require that. And I'm sitting there talking to a lady who's a teacher, arguing with me if we should implement what I'm saying or not. I'm like, lady, how many developments you'd like, and it's hard to speak from experience and to speak from ignorance. Like, how you gonna really, so, and that's where, condos, it's different now than they meant it before. Now it's not about, okay, bunch of people getting together, buying these 50 units, 100 units, and we have our own laws and live in harmony. No, now we're talking about 100, 200, $400, $500 million projects. So these associations, these trustees need to know what they're doing and need to, be looked upon by an outsider. Like when you're a doctor, you go to the doctor if you don't feel good. Like you need that. You need that oversight. You need that transparency, and you need that also. You need to build security, and which lacks in all of them. One of the hardest issues is to tell people that, hey, what you love and what you like is not working for you, okay, or it's not the best for you. So most people in Miami now, when they bought their condos or they bought their kind of real estate, they kind of, bought it because they like it. They like the prestige. They like how it makes them feel. They like the amenities that they have. But now they need to start looking at the finances and the economics of it. So they need to kind of differentiate what they like and what they love between, how much it's costing them and that makes sense or not. Because again, that like and want, you can still attain it, but differently. So in a way, I'm not telling you, hey, skip that lifestyle. No, I'm not telling you to sell that property and get out. No, I'm telling you, sell that property and rent it. So there is an alternative where you can be in the same position and renting that property practically for zero instead of costing you $5,000. So let's assume this, okay? You own a property that is worth $1 million that is costing you $5,000. Take that $1 million, sell that property, take that $1 million, invest it in the market, make the 6-7%, which is like $7,000. Take that $7,000 and pay it for rent of that property. So now you have your $1 million, right? Making your money, doing whatever it needs to do, and you are living in that property practically for zero money versus paying $5,000 less. So all what you need to do is just look at things differently and do things differently, and that's what we can help you to do. We don't do magic. We do realization. We come in and tell you what the reality is. We come in and tell you these numbers here don't work best for you. They work best for you here. And that's all what we do. We look at everything with unbiased, no feelings attached. Numbers don't have feelings. Numbers, they're numbers. And reality is reality. So, and that's where we can come in and do that. We don't, you see, when we look at something, we look at something that we are that something. So if I'm looking at the unit and I'm looking at the property, I kind of become the property. So now there is me, there is the owner, and there is the property. And now I become the property and I tell myself, hey, Salim, how can you help me? I am the property. I need your help. No feelings, no emotions, no anything biased. Just look at me as a number, and am I giving my number holder the best returns? And that's how you should look at it. Well, yeah, I mean, when you go and say, okay, I want to buy this condo and it's going to cost $1 million, fine. But again, it goes back to the same question. How much is going to cost me to keep that $1 million? Okay. What is the condo fees? What is the cost of it? What is the insurance? What is the amenity? There is a lot of bunch of numbers that they come into play that I am disregarding when I choose to buy that unit for $1 million. So every little things matter. Even the parking, or even how long will it take me to get out of the parking lot to get out of the buildings. I know some people live in buildings, take them 15, 20 minutes to get out of the parking lot. I'm like, okay, well, that's an hour out of your day. How much you get paid an hour? you know. So there is a lot of things you need to look at, and also assessment is a big problem, you know, especially with these luxury high-end items, because every little fixing requires you know, special construction like, so you're talking, you went beyond owning a home, or you went beyond owning a condo. Now you are owning something that is so unrealistic, you know, repair. It's like you have a Ferrari, you want to repair it, or Lamborghini. You know, it's different than any regular car. And in homes, it's almost the same thing. So you need to be aware of all that, and you need to look at that, not only the price, how much money I need every month to keep that, which that's a question never been asked before. You know, for investors, you have $1 million, yeah, how much is going to cost you to keep it? That's never really been a question. It's always, I have $1 million, I want to make money on it. Well, in real estate, in the condo market, especially in Miami, that becomes the question. You own that, how much it costs you to keep that $1 million? And that's actually an oxymoron question when it comes to economics, when it comes to financing. So I find the whole thing to be upside down from now, like, you know, and what's coming is even worse. So I really don't know what's going to happen, but I hope we can save some of these people, or we can end that whole disruption, you know, we can end that whole losing domino effect. All right, now I understand every situation is different, but let me give you 3 general options that might fit everybody else. I mean, it depends on your situation, okay? But again, in the end, the numbers are the numbers. Numbers don't lie, move all feelings. So one thing you can do is, you know, look at your unit, look at where you're at with everything, look at your financial situation, and see how you can kind of stabilize that. You know, one other issue is see that if you move to a cheaper unit that you rent that one, at least break even, don't lose any money, and hope for better days to come. Maybe another one which is very conventional, which I don't think anybody like to do, is, you know, get a roommate, or, you know, anything to kind of downsize the cost that you have to put out every month to keep that equity. Now, I did suggest to one of my clients, you know, 6 months ago, he called me. He owned several units in a condo that wasn't working well. So, and he's like, oh, I want to sell, blah, blah, blah. Then after I looked in his, you know, problem, I'm like, you know what? You better off buying more units. He goes, what do you mean? I said, well, you buy more units, given that the whole situation is distressed. You see, one of our advantages, we look at every problems, we see opportunities. Not every problem is a problem, okay? And every problem, there is an opportunity, but you have to be diverse enough to see it. Okay, I'm like, okay, you own 3 units, you want to get out because the assessment and all that, and I know there is another 17 units for sale, right? The whole condo, I think, was like 45. He goes, yes. I said, okay, how about if you buy that 17, then you control the association, then you can control the assessment, then you can control the future of that whole condominium. Okay, we worked on that. We got him to 17 units. Now he owns 21 units. Now he's the director of the association. From the rent that he's getting from these 21 units, he's breaking even, he's cash flowing, and he's making money. And in 2.5 years, all assessment will be paid and his money will be quadrupled. Okay? So, and the key factor there, I start looking at assessment as investment, not as expenses. And in certain situations, that is the case. You know, so assessment is not only necessarily bad. You know, troubled association or condo association is not only bad. You can always reconstruct something and move forward positively. You just have to look at everything and kind of look where the problem lays and fix it right there. Now, you know, that's the second situation is, you know, you need to reassess your position and see if more control can benefit you versus, you know, selling and going. Because I told them, I said, okay, you're going to sell these 3 units. You're going to get your money back. What are you going to do with that money? Where are you going to go and buy where there is an upside? Where there is a problem that if you fix, you can get an upside to it. Doesn't exist. So let's take your existing problem and see where, and that's how we worked it, and that's how the guy, he's much better off today than before. So now, and then the last one, the last one is just diversify your equity. You see, one thing about equity people need to know if you don't use it, you lose it. Okay? So if you have equity in something and that equity doesn't make you money, then you are losing that equity. Inflation can kill it. Okay? The downfall of the dollar vis-a-vis other, global economies can kill it. And also, if other people around you sell some of these products, they can actually reduce the equity. So again, equity, you need to use it to make you money, or you're going to lose it. So if you have equity in your condominium today and you see there is no way out of it, sell it. Take that equity, put it somewhere else, like the other guy did, that he quadrupled his money. There is other places where you can put that equity. And this is where we can come in and tell you where to go and how to go. And we can guarantee you that equity that you have today in your condo that is costing you money, we can guarantee you that it will outperform what you have it in today. Okay? So you have three options: or work with what you get, or create more, whatever your problem is, buy more of it, okay, because now you have more control and you can control the destiny and you can control the outcome, or just walk away to a different equity position. And that's what I think people should be looking at. And the last thing you want to do is do nothing, okay? Because what's coming is not going to justify your position. And keeping that equity sitting there, it's going to get eat up more and more. And you're waiting till you see how things happen for you to decide what to do. That's the wrong thing to do. You need to be overactive. You need to be proactive. You need to, and that's where you can actually make money or not money, because you need to decide ahead, not with what's happening today is what's happening today. Where you want to be 6 months, 1 year, 2 years from now is what's important. So you need to do something. Everybody in Miami needs to do something. Now, I understand everything I have told you, is a little complicated maybe, to me it's, hey, I lived it for 30 years. To me it's, I sleep, wake up, that's what I think of. Now, one rule, okay, again, one of my old mentors told me that. He goes, listen, every dollar should make you 10 cents, okay? And this is being optimistic. You shoot for the 10. If it made you 5, good. But you shoot for the 10. So if you have equity today, that equity should make you money. There is no ifs or buts about it. If that equity doesn't make you money, you need to put it somewhere where it makes you money. I don't care if you rent. That's secondary, okay? Because owning and renting, sometimes renting is much better than owning, okay? So there is a lot of multimillionaires, they don't own. The only reason they own because, they want to have actually a negative return on their tax return. So these big rich people, nobody owns for profit. Okay, they own because they're playing the game, the tax game. Now, for regular people, you need to follow the market. You need to know when you're in and when you're out. It goes back to the old saying, you make money in real estate when you buy, meaning you have to buy right. If you don't buy right then and there, you are losing money. So my only advice to everybody, look at your equity. If you have a $500,000 equity in your mortgage, in your property today, it should yield you $25,000 to $3,000, that $500,000. If it doesn't, then you need to get out, put it somewhere else. Go put it and give it to the bank. The bank will give you 4% today on your money. So a bank will give you, on $1 million, they'll give you $4,000 a month today on your money, secured. So go rent with that. So you need to get out of that whole stigma, oh, I own this. No, you don't own shit. It's all leverage, it's all debt, and you pay to own. So it's like you have money in a saving account and you are paying every month $4,000 or $5,000 to keep that money in your saving account. How would that make sense? And I guarantee you 80% of the people in Miami that they own property today, that's their problem today. And yet, they don't want to acknowledge it because it makes them look like a fool maybe, or they don't want to do anything about it because they don't see any way out of it. But no, there is a way out of it. And no, you're not a fool like everybody else. No, it's just something nobody told you. It's not something nobody pointed out to you because it's none of anybody's benefit. None. Not the banker, not the realtor, not the broker, not the developer, not the land, no one. Okay? Everybody's keeping hush-hush until in the end, because you're paying the bill. You, the owner of the property today, you are paying the bill of those whole misconception of the economy. And you're the victim in the end. So it doesn't cost you much to get somebody to look at your situation and see an alternative. There is an alternative. There is. But it just depends on your situation. Depends where you want to go. Depends what you want to do. Depends how you want your money work for you. So there is one standard thing. Your money should make you money. Your equity should make you money. Equity, you don't lose it, you lose it. You don't use it, you lose it. You know, it triumphs for a reason, I think. You know, so that's how you need to look at things. Okay, and you can't keep looking that you're making money today, you're going to keep making money to supplement the deficit. You can't think like that. That money you're making not for you to spend. You know, that money you're making is for you to grow your wealth. So you need to start thinking about, and look, it took me a lot of lost money. It took me a lot of mistakes. It took me a lot of, you know, to know this. Okay, because I did it all. And now I came to understand that it's better for me to preach about it than me doing it. Because in certain situation, I wouldn't do anything. Because it doesn't make sense. Now you're going to tell me if there is a development, the numbers don't add up. I don't, like the numbers don't add up. Like in the end, why are we doing all this? Why are we developing and building? For what? The numbers has to add up. And most of these projects that you see today, mark my words, I don't know how they're going to finish. I don't understand unless, I don't know. It's 2008, it was bad. I don't know. Like, again, the numbers are not there. Okay? And numbers don't lie. We can all bullshit and lie. We can all have emotional and feelings. In the end, numbers don't lie. Numbers have no feelings. They don't care about Dolce & Gabbana, Mercedes. They don't care. In the end, you pay the bill. And that's where, you know, I think people should be cautious. So now, if this is for you, if whatever we talked about kind of touch remotely to your situation, I am willing to give you a free assessment on your situation. Just reach out to me at salim@salimlahoud.com, and I'm there for you. Just give me a little blurb about your situation, and we can give you the best solution to get out of it.